I wasn't sure what project to do for the behind the scenes sewing this month, so I decided to create a poll in the community tab on my channel and ask you what you wanted to watch. So there were three options. First one was the pajamas and resizing them to fit because, as you know, they were ginormous. Second option was the pleated skirt, and do I really need to follow all the instructions in the pattern or not? And option number three was the fleece pullover and how to put a zipper into fleece. Now, that was the overwhelming majority vote, so that is what I'm going to be talking about today. We're going to walk through the pattern instructions. Just generally, I'm going to show you some things. I'm going to give you some tips on marking fleece, especially dark fleece, because it's really hard to get good marks. So I found a couple of options that I want to share with you today. So keep watching as we go behind the scenes to sew a half zip fleece pullover. Hi, I'm Tony, and this is Sew Lounge. Now, today we are going to be working with McCall's 8143, which are, it's actually three different variations of a learn to sew pattern. They are some kind of activewear looking. There's a hoodie, there's like a quilted combo, and then we are going to be doing letter B, which is the half zip fleece pullover. Now, you can use regular fleece, you can use sweatshirt fleece, you can use minky fleece to make this. Those are all recommended by the pattern. And I started making this or cut everything out last month, and it was actually really still warm down here in Texas last month. And I was really just not motivated to sew this. You know, fleece is fuzzy and it just kind of was gross to touch when it was so hot outside. One thing I have not mentioned to y'all is that my sewing studio is the hottest room in the house during the summer, and it's the coldest room in the house during the winter. So when I sew, I like to kind of keep the fabrics current with the seasons, because sewing fleece when it's 95 degrees outside means that it's really hot inside, and it's just weird and it just yucky. So interestingly enough, the temperatures have just dropped in Texas this week, and we are rocking some 54-degree weather today. So it's actually cold in here, which is why I'm wearing my fleece. But let's get to the behind the scenes. And one thing, just as a reminder, this is the fleece I'm using. It is this dark multicolored fleece. I do have all my pieces cut out. Yeah, that's a sleeve. So I've got the sleeves cut out. I have the front and the back cut out, which were both cut on the fold. So it's basically, you know, the front, the back, two sleeves, and then the two pieces of the collar. So there aren't a lot of pieces to this pattern, which always make it a lot easier. Make sure you cut two collars. I was prepping for this video and realized that I'd only cut one. That's something I do frequently, so not a big deal to just go grab it out of the scrap bin and cut another one. So because I'm using this dark fleece, it is very hard to transfer the pattern marks so that I can see them. And because of the way they want us to put that zipper into the front of our jacket or pullover, you have to have that center front line marked, because that's where we're going to cut. So you have to be able to see that. And then additionally, there are two little dots that you transfer the marks from your pattern to the fleece that you have to mark, because we have to do some reinforcement stitching in that area that is marked to make sure that it doesn't come apart once we do that cut down the middle and then cut towards the side seams so that we can put the zipper in. So I have been racking my brain on what to use. I had a chalk pencil that I got at Missouri Star Quilt Company, and it's a really heavy pastel. That was not showing up. I had some white tracing paper. That was not showing up. The pile of the fleece was fighting me on pretty much everything. So I put out a question to some friends of mine, like, hey, what would y'all use? And a friend of mine said that his wife would sometimes use an eyeliner pencil to mark things that wouldn't mark with anything else. I thought, oh, okay, that's great. But I don't have a white eyeliner pencil. But I did have a white liquid liner, kind of inky liner. So I tried that. And that's what I'm going to show you today. Let's go in for a closer look. So this is the eyeliner pencil. This is NYX. It's just a white liquid liner. I think that a pencil would work just as well. I just don't happen to have one. This is actually kind of old, so it's kind of gumming up, but it did work fine for this purpose. So the way that I did this was I unfolded my center front piece along this fold line. This is where we need to put the line in because we have to cut down the center front, and then we're going to put the zipper in and we're going to stitch it 1/4 of an inch and go around to make that happen once we add the collar. So we'll put that zipper in there. Now, I just lined this up along this edge and just kind of drew along the pattern piece. I did use this ruler because it's kind of a harder edge, so I could line things up a little bit better. And this is not super great because it's dry. So I think I will probably go buy one of these at Ulta or Target, just so I have one for future reference, and probably get a regular chalk eyeliner pencil too, just to have that. So got that marked. I had already pre-marked it. So you can see that it's down there. It's the center front. It's not perfectly straight because once again, because of the fleece and because of the nature of this, it's just hard to get a perfect line. I think it's going to be fine. The other thing that needed to be transferred is this little dot down here. I don't think you can see that. Let me tilt this a little bit. There we go. So I'm going a little bit close. Oop, that's the wrong way. There we go. Okay, so where are the dots? Okay, I think they're right there in the middle. So the dot is right here, and we need to transfer that. This was not the easiest way to put a dot with this pen, this weird, like, I don't know, it's like a paintbrushy thing. It's really long and it's very unruly, so that was a little problematic. I did kind of mash it down and make that happen, but it's not great. So I went back in with my pastel pencil, kind of drew over it again, and then I flipped the pattern piece to be able to do the exact same dot on the other side. Now the measurement between the center front and the stitch line where we are going to be stitching a little bit later is 1/4 of an inch. I'm not going to mark that in. I'll just adjust my zipper foot accordingly when I put my stitch line in so that I don't have to worry about it. So the center front mark is arguably the most important mark to get right because we've got to get everything lined up so that zipper does not look funky. And since it's in the very front of our pullover, we want it to look nice, we want it to look straight, and we want it to lie nice and flat. So once you get that marked, you are pretty much set up to start sewing. But we've got one more thing we need to transfer marks to, and we need to do it accurately, and that is the sleeve. Now, if you watched my jacket sleeve video that I made with my grandma, you probably know by now that making sure you transfer the marks from the sleeve to your pattern piece is crucial to get that sleeve in so that it looks nice and it's in the right place. Now, once again, we have the fleece problem that is preventing us from making nice, crisp marks. The liquid eyeliner pencil did not work great. It was okay. I could do it for the front of the bottom of the zipper. That was okay. But trying to mark these sleeve dots, so we have the one at the top and we have the one at the front and one at the back, to get those all lined up and get all those marks transferred and then make the corresponding marks on the front and back of the fleece, that was extremely challenging, and I could not find a marking tool to do it. So I was walking around Joann's trying to figure out what could I use to just mark a dot? What would mark a dot? Is there anything out there? And I went down the quilting aisle and I found this. Now, if you haven't seen one of these, this is basically they call it a quilter's basting gun. It is made by Dritz. It is part of their quilting collection, so it's on that aisle. It's not in the sewing aisle. If you've ever worked retail, you know this as a price gun. So I think they had tags attached if we were actually using it for retail. I worked at Old Navy back in the day. I really enjoyed using these because it's just fun. Be careful, it does have a sharp point, you know, so don't play with it. But this is what I found, and this works actually really, really well. And I'm going to demonstrate it today. So I just have my whole in my sleeve. I'm going to pull my fabric all the way against the gun. This is the only way this works. If you only put it halfway in, it doesn't go all the way through. And then you just pull it. And now we've got a nice little tag in there where the dot is, so I can get everything all lined up evenly. I'm going to repeat the process at the top dot and now at the rear shoulder dot. And the added bonus of using this is that, you know, one side of the tag is bigger than the other. If you shoot from the top, that will always be on the top. And if you have fabric that's a little bit hard to see, right side from wrong side, and a little difficult to tell that, you can, you know, put the large tag to the top of it, so you always know which side is the right side. So that's another added bonus. You could pretty much do that with any fabric. If you had a hard to sew or hard to differentiate fabric, you could always just put a little tag on anything, even if you weren't specifically using it for marking. So those are my 2 hot marking tips to help you, especially if you're using fleece. I think this was $20 at Joann's. I did have a 40% off coupon to make that much more reasonably priced. And now we are going to be ready to start sewing. And I'm going to pin some of the pieces together, and then we will head to the sewing machine. So hopefully this does not look too weird with a camera angle, but I'm optimistic. So remember, fleece is knit, so I'm changing my needle to a ballpoint needle so that everything will sew nice and neat, and that my fleece threads will not be split because of a pointy needle. They've got a nice ballpoint needle to be able to just slide between them. And I can't see the needle to thread it. Hold on. I'm going to get this in a second, y'all. Seriously. I've done this so many times, like it's like muscle memory at this point. I don't even need to see it, although for some reason this isn't cooperating today. Oh, Clementine came to say hi. Clementine's going to come help. Clementine, are you helping? Okay, maybe not. This is a little embarrassing. But, you know, you get to a certain age and then you just can't see anymore. Okay, I got it. I got it without an automatic needle threader. So Clementine came to inspect, and my needle is threaded and ready to go. The first thing we're going to be doing is stitching at 1/4 inch on our mark. So we're going to start, I'm going to start a little bit above this first dot. I'm going to pivot at the dot, sew across to the other dot, and then sew up. So I'm keeping a 1/4 inch from this center front mark, and that is what I'm going to do first. That's just going to do some reinforcement stitching, and I am using black thread, y'all, so this is going to be a little hard to see, but I think it'll be okay. Okay, so I think this is better. I'm not sure. It's kind of hard with camera stuff, and I've got the new fabric holder in the corner, and I usually put my table there to film from. So bear with me as we figure this all out together. I'm just pinning the sides together of my fleece. I really like using these enormous quilting pins. My grandma hates them. She thinks they're too long, but number one, you can always see them with the little yellow balls on the top. And then when you've got thick fabric like this fleece, you know you've got everything all lined up the way it needs to be. And I think I did this right. Oh no, it's too long on one side. So fleece does stretch, and this did move around while I was sewing it. I am going to start from the armhole and then sew down towards the hem. That way, if it's off a little bit, it's going to be off at the hem where we can adjust it. If it's off in the armhole, I'm going to have problems getting that sleeve in later. So I'd rather make sure that, you know, it was right there, and then fix it at the bottom if needed. And this is very wiggly fleece. It's kind of weird. But I'm going to pin everything together. I've got one side done. I'm going to do the other side and the shoulder seams, because once we get this all stitched in place, the next step's going to be, what's the next step? Oh, we've got to attach the collar, and then we will put in the zipper. when I sew the shoulder seams, I'm going to start at the armhole again and then move in towards the neckline. The collar is going to be easier to fix if needed. This is actually all matching up okay, so I'm not going to stress about that too much. It is knit, so there is a little bit of stretch in it if you need to pull it to make sure everything lines up correctly. It will not, it's more forgiving than other fabrics. So I've got half of it pinned. I'm going to keep going to the other side, and then I will be sewing that all together, and we will come back and do the collar and get that zipper going. So I've got my stay stitching, it's in. Next step, I actually misspoke earlier, is to cut down the front. So I'm going to very carefully cut down the middle of the white stripe I made. You can see Clementine back over here. What are you doing, Clemmy? And once we get down to the bottom, do not stitch through that bottom, do not clip the bottom stitch line. We're going to pivot out to the dots. It's going to make like a little triangle shape. But once again, do not clip the stitch line that we put in there earlier. There we go. Okay, so that's going to look like a little triangle at the bottom, and then we're going to go back in there and put in the zipper. I'm going to trim up these loose threads so they don't get caught in something later. And there's some over here too. I always clip these threads because I don't want to have to go back and do it later when they're sticking out of a seam and looking crazy. All right, next step now is attaching the collar. So they actually had you interface one side of the collar. I'm not doing that. It's fleece. It's going to be stiff enough. This is thick. It's going to be a pain to try and get it to get that interfacing to stick to the fleece. I'm already having enough trouble marking. So I'm going to skip that step, and we'll see if that was a mistake or not. Let me go grab the collar, and then I'm going to put that in before we continue with the zipper. So next step is going to be pinning the collar to the neck hole or neck edge of the jacket base. And I started doing this and wasn't really paying attention. And the way you need to pin this is so that the right sides are together. So the right side of the collar is touching the right side of the outside of the jacket. So you're pinning from the wrong side, and you want that collar to be inside of the neckline. That way, when you flip it up, we can attach the zipper. Everything will be nice and even. I am starting at the front neck edge because I want to make sure that's all lined up straight, because that is where we're going to put in the zipper. I'm just going to go around, make sure the other side is also in the right spot. And that looks good, so we're good there. Matching the notches, sometimes your notches might have shifted a little bit. I know mine did when I was cutting the fleece, so that they don't match up perfectly, but the most important thing to match up is going to be that front edge. So make sure you do that well, and everything else will work. The instructions say to ease it around, clip if necessary. As I'm doing this, I'm not really having that problem. There is a nice amount of stretch in the fleece, so you should be able to just adjust it to make it curve nice and neat. Once we get that all done, we're going to go in and put in some basting stitches, then go in and put the final stitch line in, and then trim before we move on to the big step of putting in the zipper. I realize that just mere seconds ago I said that we were going to baste and then put in the permanent stitch line and then trim, and I sat down at my machine, did not set it for basting stitches, and just sewed in my collar. So now that that's done, we don't have to do the basting stitches. Thankfully, I think it was one of those instances where basting stitches are not 100% necessary. Thankfully, the fleece does have enough stretch in it. I have a nice, clean, no bunches or anything on my seam line, so that all looks nice. And I am going to trim this edge here. It did say to trim it towards the collar, or trim and then press towards the collar. So we're going to do that real quick. I'm just going to trim that out a little bit to just reduce some of the bulk, because as we have mentioned, fleece is bulky, and so you don't want a big chunky seam right there up against your neck. And then once I get that all trimmed, I'm going to head back to the cutting table and we're going to walk through the steps of putting in the zipper. So I don't think it's going to be as hard as I initially thought. It looks like it's very much or very similar to putting in an invisible zipper and the way that you go through the steps. So we will go through that together, do not stress, and fingers crossed it all works out. So give me a sec, I'm going to do some trimming and we'll keep moving forward. I've been looking at the pattern instructions and my zipper and trying to get this all pinned in like the directions say, but there's just a tiny bit of a problem. Apparently, the zipper that they used for the instructions is narrower than my zipper. So I just used one of these sport zippers. It's a heavy plastic zipper. I wanted a sporty look for my fleece, and I thought this zipper looked good. It looks a lot like the zipper I've got on my Columbia fleece. Now, the problem is that the width of this zipper tape is a 1/2 inch. So between the teeth and the edge, it's a 1/2 inch. Pretty straightforward. The pattern instructions want me to measure or to line up this outside edge of the zipper tape with the outside edge of my fleece, but to keep the zipper teeth on the 1/4 inch stitch line, and that's impossible because the zipper teeth are at a 1/2 inch, not a 1/4 inch. So I could either, you know, trim my zipper tape to a 1/4 inch and then line that up, but that seems like there's a lot of room for error. So I really just don't want to do that. I'm just going to line up the outside edge of the zipper tape with my fleece like I've done here. So I have it all lined up. The first step is attaching it to, so I'm attaching the right side of the zipper. Is that the right side? The left side of the zipper, yes, to the right side of the fleece. And basically I'm going to stitch it down and then it's going to flip to the inside, and then we're going to move to the wrong side to stitch this piece on. And everything will line up. I think I said that right? Yes. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hope for the best. I don't know if this zipper is going to be a problem. The funny thing is, it's the zipper, the sport zipper is what it looks like in the picture. So I don't know. I don't know if they have, I don't know. Maybe next time I can use an invisible zipper. This is the same kind of technique. If you've put in an invisible zipper, you put it to the right side first and then you turn it and do it that way to make the magic happen. I'm going to head over to my sewing machine and change over to my zipper foot, and we shall see how this goes. But fingers crossed, the width of the zipper does not make a difference. We'll see. Let's keep moving forward. We're going to head back to the sewing machine. So first things first, I am switching over to a zipper foot, and let's see how we're sewing this. I want my zipper foot to be on the outside of the teeth, so that means I need to move the needle over to the left as far as it goes. I need to adjust this, make sure we're not doing a basting stitch, which we were not because I did not put it on basting. Okay, so I'm going to get everything lined up. I'm going to start at the zipper teeth since I'm going to be attaching the other collar. Okay. Ooh. I don't know, this fleece is kind of rolling and I'm getting a little nervous about putting in the zipper. Okay, wait, I need my pin cushion. Get situated. Chair all lined up. All right, try this out. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so far so good. We've made it to the top of the collar. My zipper's in. I think it looks pretty good. It's pretty even on both sides. I'm gonna hold this up so y'all can see it. So you can see it looks pretty good. It's like my sides are matched up from where the center seam was, so I'm happy about that, but it's looking kind of weird and lumpy down here. I think it's because the zipper either finished at the wrong spot or this wasn't far enough down. So I think I'm going to cheat this out a little bit and go in and clip this down a tiny bit so that I can fold this little triangle between the zipper. Oh wait, that looks a little bit better. Okay, I'm gonna look at that. I might do a little bit of hand sewing to just hold this all in place. I don't know if I need to do a top stitch on this or not. I have to go look at the instructions again because I don't remember. Clementine came over to help. She really likes fleece. She's sitting on the sleeves that I've sewn, and I put some thread on her head just because it's a good place to hold it, right? Yes. Well, okay. Well, almost. Let me take a look at his instructions and see how this is supposed to fit. And like I said, hand sewing probably going to be the solution to this problem. So it turns out that hand sewing is going to be the option. I'm just going to be doing some basting. So I'm going to do it in a different colored thread so I can see it. Once I get the underside of the collar attached, then we will go back in and top stitch from the right side to get the zipper in place and connect the collar pieces all together. So I'm not going to stress about this too much. I'm putting a knot in this so I don't lose it as I'm basting. I'm just going to cheat it out. So we're just going to cheat it out. And make that look a little bit better through there so that when we do come back with the top stitching, it won't make too much of a difference. It's still going to look pretty nice. And what was I saying? It'll be in the right place so that when it is top stitched, you're not going to notice that I kind of made a mess of this. It's not a huge mess. It's really just more of a, it was hard to sew with the, ow, okay, there we go. Let me try this again. It was just hard to sew with the teeth and the zipper foot. It's always hard at the very bottom of the zipper. And I didn't pull up those teeth in quite the right place. But this is okay. This is an acceptable solution to this problem. Of course, the fleece is thick, my needle's thick. I'm just gonna try and make this look a little bit better, get this all in the right spot. Thankfully, this is fleece, so it's not going to ravel or be too unruly, so that's an added bonus. If I was making this in a different fabric, might be a little bit different. I know that I have some stretch velvet that kind of just falls apart, so that would be quite problematic in this pattern, but that is a different pattern, so I will deal with that later. For right now, we're just going to... It's this weird little triangle at the bottom that's the problem. So my collar is all attached. The upper collar is attached. That's going to end up getting sides folded so the zipper goes down. Let me show it this way. Okay, so that's the top of the collar. This is the actual collar. I need to trim out the seam because it's chunky, and then I need to fold this down, fold that in, fold that over so that it looks nice, and get everything trimmed up. This is really chunky right here, so I need to go in and just trim out this so that that won't look that way. And then I'm going to go back in and top stitch this all in place once we've got the collar all lined up and ready to go. I have the collar finished, and there's a couple of things that I did different from the pattern instructions. First of all, they wanted me to fold under this bottom edge of the inside collar 5/8 of an inch, then trim it off 3/8 of an inch, and then go back in and tack it. I didn't do that. I left it at its original length of 5/8 of an inch. I basted it to across the seam that attached the outside collar to the neckline, and then I stitched in the ditch, and then I went back and trimmed off that seam. This is going to be sporty. I'm going to wear this. I want to just throw it in the washer and dryer and not have to stress about it. So I did not want to have to go, you know, fold and tack and do all of that. I just think that's not secure enough for this type of garment. And so that's one thing I did different, and I think it's going to be much better. And that's kind of how this is finished. It's like stitched on the inside. And so that's kind of what I was taking cues from, is what did Columbia do when they made this fleece? And then the other thing they did not have on there, but I just thought looked nicer, I stitched along the top edge of the collar to keep those two pieces together. I think it looks neater. That's how, once again, this collar's finished. It gives it a little bit more stability, and it makes it not be puffy, because you know you can't really iron fleece like you could iron cotton and get a nice crisp edge. So I figured that that was the next best thing, was just getting it in. After I sewed that top in, then I did pivot and come down. I went around the zipper. I think our zipper problem is solved. Let's see if that's, there we go. I think the zipper problem was solved with the basting that I put in here, so it looks much nicer. It is all in place where it's supposed to be, and I'm happy with the way that looks. Apparently the wider zipper tape did not make a difference in the actual sewing process. Zipper looks good. I'm really happy with how everything matches up. Now, of course, we did cut this on the fold, so it makes sense that it would all match up, but I didn't get the zipper wonky. So the zipper is in there right, since all the different lines do still match up. Next, we've got sleeves coming up, and I am going to get everything lined up for that and stitch those in, and then move on to the hemming part of this fleece. And we're almost done. Super excited. And just like that, it's all finished. So I ended up doing an 1.5 inch hem in the bottom, and that was the recommended hem width for the pattern. I just didn't put the elastic in. On the sleeve, I did 1 inch, and then I double stitched both of them to just give it that sporty look. That's pretty much how my Columbia fleece is stitched, so I just kept up with that look. Now, I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. It is a little bit bigger than I had hoped, but once again, you know, my sizing with McCall's has been a little bit off lately. The large is a size 16 to 18, whereas the medium is a 12-14. I kind of feel like when you've got the letter sizing, small, medium, large, it's more like real accurate sizing than the usual pattern size sizing, because I'm usually a 16 in pattern sizes, but this is, it's definitely large. This would definitely fit my sister, but I'm keeping it. I'm not giving this to her. And I like it. It's boxy, but it's also sportswear for the winter, so not a big deal if it's a little bit big. If I made this again, I would definitely go for the medium, which would give me more of a fitted look, like this Columbia jacket, which is just a regular medium, which is the size I normally wear. So, thoughts on the marking tools I used. The liquid eyeliner worked great for the line down the front of the jacket. It is perfect. I mean, it's like perfectly straight. I got my zipper all lined up. Everything was good. The dots at the bottom of the zipper, I had a little bit of trouble there because they just weren't super spot on. Now, the quilting basting gun with the little red tags that I used, that worked fantastically to mark everything for the sleeves. I got those in really easily. I also used the markings for the collar, also got everything matched up perfectly. In hindsight, if I make this again, I will use those little tags for the dots at the base of the zipper to know where to cut and where to pivot, because I think that'll make things so much easier. What else was I going to say about this? Oh yeah, fleece is really forgiving, easy to work with. If you're new to fleece, just, you know, take your time. It does move a little bit more than most fabrics when you're cutting and sewing, but if you're patient with it, and it's going to forgive a lot of human error. So the other bonus of using fleece is seam finishes. You don't have to worry about that. Fleece doesn't ravel. So after I got everything sewn, I went back in, I trimmed out the seams in the armholes, and I could do them real close, get them nice and small, and don't have to worry about them raveling. So that was an added bonus as well. I think this turned out really, really cute. I'm looking forward to wearing it. It is super warm. I bought the anti-pill fleece that they have at Joann's, and I wasn't sure of, you know, how it was going to work out. I don't really sew with fleece a lot, so I won't pretend like I do, but I've gotten some of the Blizzard fleece to make pet blankets with, which is a much lighter weight. So this is definitely warmer, and I think this is going to be really nice to wear with leggings or jeans, you know, through the winter months. Now, if you want to see what this looks like on, I will be modeling all of my November creations coming up in the end of the month video, so stay tuned for that. And until that next video comes out, you definitely want to check out this one.